I want to write to you tonight. From this side of a year, I would not have been able to describe to you in advance. I am 27 and a half. You will be reading this, if reading is even the right word, in about a year. You are not yet the woman who will sit down to write it. You are still, as I write, the woman who I am writing to. And I want to do something specific in this letter. I want to give you the 5 things that you will, in the next year, slowly stop doing. And I want to give you each of them now, in advance, so that you can, if you choose, begin the stopping a little sooner. The stopping's the entire shape of the year. The 5 things taken together are the project that 27, when you arrive at it, will turn out to have been about. Before I begin, I want to say something about the year you are about to enter. 26 is not, in retrospect, a difficult year. 26 is a year that looks fine from the outside. You will have, in the next 12 months, a job that pays you reasonably, a flat you can afford, a small group of friends you mostly like, a relationship that is acceptable, a face you only sometimes argue with in the mirror. By all measurable standards, you will be, in the year that is coming, doing well. The trouble is that the year you are about to enter is the year you will start, quietly and without consulting anyone, to notice that doing well by everyone else's standards is not quite the same as being well. The two have, you will discover, drifted apart. The drift is what 27 is for. 27 is the year you close the gap. I am telling you this not to alarm you. I am telling you because I want you to recognize the small first signs when they come. You will think on some Sunday in October of this year that something is slightly wrong, and you will not know what it is. You will misidentify the feeling. You will think it is your job, your boyfriend, your flat, the city. It is none of those things. It is the small ache of a woman who is starting to suspect that the life she has built is not, in fact, hers. The ache is not bad news. The ache is, in this letter's argument, the most important development of your adult life. It is the beginning of you coming back to yourself. I should warn you that the ache, once it starts, does not let up easily. It is not a Sunday afternoon mood that resolves by Monday morning. It is, more accurately, the slow turning on of a question that has been quiet for years and which now wants an answer. The question in its plainest form is, am I living the life that is actually mine? You have not seriously asked yourself this question since you were 18. The question, when it returns, is not always pleasant company, but it is necessary company. The women who do not let it return are the women who, at 40, are still living someone else's idea of a life. I want you to let the question in early. I want you to let it stay through the year so. 5 things you will stop doing. I want to be specific about each. I want you to remember them when the time comes. I should also say, before I go any further, that I have written this letter in a specific order, from the easiest stop to the hardest. The first one, performing effortlessness, you will likely begin to release on your own, almost without trying. The second, third, and fourth will take some deliberate noticing. The fifth, the one underneath all the others, will take the most. If you find yourself, 6 months into the year, having completed only the first 2, you are not behind. You are on the schedule. The schedule for becoming yourself is slower than the schedule for becoming impressive. You have been on the wrong schedule for a long time. The first thing you will stop doing, somewhere around your 27th birthday, is performing effortlessness. You do not know you are performing effortlessness. I did not know I was until I was. So let me describe it, so that you can see what I am pointing at. You have, since you were about 19, been operating under an unspoken rule that your achievements should look as if they had not required effort. The good grades at university, the first job, the apartment, the body you maintained, the vocabulary you developed, the skill of dressing well, the ability to have a sophisticated opinion about a film you saw. All of these were the result of considerable, sometimes punishing, work. None of them, when you described them to others, were ever described as work. They were described as luck or fortune or, in some cases, casual asides. You learned at some point that effort was unflattering, that trying too hard was a thing women were not supposed to be seen doing, that the women who were admired in your social class were the women who appeared to have arrived at their lives without exertion. So you hid the exertion. You hid the late nights at the desk. You hid the careful editing of your wardrobe. You hid the gym sessions. You hid the hours of careful conversation rehearsal before parties. You hid the reading. You hid the journaling. You hid the slow private project of becoming someone behind a polished surface that suggested you had always, somehow, been her. The cost of this performance in your 20s has been enormous. You will only see how enormous it was after you have stopped doing it. The performance of effortlessness means you have never been able to feel proud of any of the work you have actually done. To feel proud, you would have to acknowledge the effort. To acknowledge the effort, you would break the rule of the performance. So you have done years of work and felt throughout only that you were doing something everyone else was also doing easily, and that you were probably falling behind. This is an exhausting and quietly miserable way to live. You did not know there was another way. At 27, you will, for the first time in years, tell someone about a piece of work you have just finished. You will say that it took 6 months. You will say that it was difficult. You will say that you are pleased with how it turned out. You will, importantly, not apologize for the time it took. The friend you tell will not react with judgment. She will, in fact, sound a small note of relief because she has been performing effortlessness for so long herself that hearing someone else admit to effort will give her permission to admit to her own. The two of you, after this conversation, will be slightly closer than you were before. The closeness will be one of the most important things 27 gives you. The first thing you stop doing is performing effortlessness. The first thing you start doing is being honest about effort. The shift sounds small. It will, in fact, change the texture of every relationship you have, because every relationship is currently being managed inside the performance. And once the performance is set down, the relationships become finally real. The second thing you will stop doing at 27 is apologizing for your pace. Right now at 26, you are, although you would not put it this way, in a quiet panic about the speed of your life. You compare yourself multiple times a day to a moving baseline of women your age, and you find yourself, in your private estimation, slightly behind on most of the metrics. The friend who has been engaged for 2 years, the colleague who got promoted before you did, the cousin who has bought a flat, the school friend whose career has gone exactly to plan, the woman from Instagram who is your age and seems to be, by your reading, 2 or 3 years ahead of you in her life. You apologize for your pace constantly, in small ways you do not notice. You frame your current job as a stepping stone, even when you are mostly enjoying it, because describing it as a stepping stone makes it sound like you are headed somewhere. You frame your relationship in terms of where you hope it will go, rather than what it is, because what it currently is sounds, to your internal audience, slightly disappointing. You frame your living arrangement as temporary. You frame your savings as the start of a larger plan. Everything in your life is, in your internal narration, a draft of the real life that is coming. The cost of this is that you are not, at 26, actually living any of your life. You are living instead a small mental commentary on your own life, in which you are constantly explaining, to no one in particular, why you are not yet who you are supposed to be. This commentary is exhausting. It runs every waking hour. You have not, in the last 3 years, sat down with anything you have actually built and felt, fully, that you had built it. You have only ever, the moment you had it, started comparing it to what other people had. At 27, you will, on a Sunday afternoon in early spring, walk through a park and suddenly, for about 10 minutes, stop having the commentary. You will just walk. The trees will look like trees. The air will smell like air. You will, in that small 10 minutes, exist in your own life without explanation. The experience will be so foreign that you will, when it ends, feel a small grief, because you will realize that you have not had 10 minutes of unmediated existence in several years. That 10-minute walk will be the beginning of the second thing stopping. You will start slowly to set down the apology for your pace. You will let your job be your job instead of a stepping stone. You will let your relationship be what it is instead of what it might become. You will let your flat be your flat. You will let the calendar be the calendar. You will stop in increments, narrating your own life to a panel of imaginary judges. The panel was never real. The panel could not have been pleased anyway, because nobody on it had a coherent definition of what would have been pleasing. Is a passage in this essay called On Self-Respect, written by Joan Didion in 1961 and republished a few years later, that I want to share with you because I came across it during the year you are about to live, and it changed something in me. She wrote, "However long we postpone it, we eventually lie down alone in that notoriously uncomfortable bed, the one we make ourselves." What I took from that line is that no amount of external arrangement, no fast pace, no early engagement, no impressive job will save you from having to one day, eventually, lie alone with yourself and ask whether the life you built was actually yours. The earlier you ask, the cheaper the question. The later you ask, the more expensive. 27 is when I asked. I am writing you now at 26 to suggest you ask sooner. The third thing you will stop doing at 27 is outsourcing your taste. This is a delicate one to describe, because at 26 you do not believe you have outsourced anything. You believe you have taste. You have a curated apartment. You have favorite films. You have a music habit. You have specific feelings about hotels. You have opinions on clothes. You consider yourself, in fact, mildly opinionated. What I want you to look at gently is where each of those opinions actually came from. The apartment was decorated according to an aesthetic you absorbed from 3 Instagram accounts. The favorite films are the films your boyfriend introduced you to in the first year, which you correctly identified as the films a sophisticated woman should like. The music is what was playing in the bars you went to in your early 20s, and which became, by repetition, your music. The hotel preferences are what the older woman at your old job had. The clothes are inflected by what your friend group is buying. You have, in the last 6 years, accumulated a coherent and admirable set of opinions. You did not, however, develop any of them from inside yourself. You imported them, refined them, and now mistake them for your own. This is a bigger problem than it sounds. The reason it is bigger than it sounds is that taste in adult life is the operating system through which you make almost every meaningful decision. Whom to date, what job to take, which city to live in, what to read, how to spend a Saturday. If your taste has been outsourced, all of those decisions are being made, in some sense, by the committee of voices you imported in your early 20s. You think you are choosing. You are, in fact, executing the choices of a collective you no longer remember consenting to. At 27, you will, on an ordinary evening, sit down in your flat and try to identify which of the books on your shelf you actually want to read tonight. And you will discover that you cannot answer the question. The pathway in your brain that knows which book you actually want to read has been so long inactive that you no longer have access to it. This will, when you notice it, feel slightly frightening. The fright is correct. You have lost contact with the center. The recovery will take about a year. You will start with very small things. Which of the 2 coffees do I actually want this morning? The one I usually order, or the one I have been meaning to try? You will choose the one you have been meaning to try, even when you suspect you will not like it. You will, in the moment of choosing, feel a small jolt of something that has been missing for a long time. The jolt is the center coming back. It is small. It is unmistakable. By month 6, you will, in shops, no longer need to consult anyone in your head before buying a coat. By month 9, you will be reading books no one in your circle has heard of, because they are the books you found on your own. In a small bookshop you walked past on a Saturday afternoon. By month 12, you will have an apartment that is no longer the apartment of an Instagram aesthetic. It will be, in some small way, your apartment. People will visit and say it looks like you. You will be surprised by the compliment, because you had not realized, until they said it, that there was a you it was supposed to look like. The third thing you stop doing is outsourcing your taste. The third thing you start doing is becoming someone, in the technical sense of the word. There is no one alive, before they have done this work, who is fully a someone. There are only carriers of imported opinion. The someone is what is left when the import has been examined, and most of it returned to sender. The fourth thing you will stop doing at 27 is mistaking anxiety for love. I have to be careful here, because this is the part of the letter you will most want to disagree with. You will read this paragraph and immediately think, well, that does not apply to me. My relationship is good. So I'm going to ask you to stay with it for a few sentences before you decide. The relationship you are in at 26 is on the surface fine. He is kind. He is reliable. He shows up when he says he will. There are no significant fights. You spend most weekends together. By every external measure, the relationship is a success. The trouble, which you have not yet allowed yourself to articulate, is that the relationship does not, in your body, feel like anything. There is no spike of recognition when he walks into the room. There is no quick pulse of want. There is, in fact, a kind of pleasant flatness that you have, until now, interpreted as maturity. You think mature love feels like this. You think the spikes and the pulses were for your early 20s, and that what you have now is the grown-up version. What you will discover at 27 is more complicated than that. You will discover that some of what you have been calling chemistry in your earlier relationships was in fact anxiety. The pulse of recognition was, in many cases, your nervous system registering the familiar shape of an unreliable partner. The spike of want was, in many cases, the slot machine effect of an inconsistent attention. The early 20s men who electrified you were, on closer inspection, the men whose distance kept your nervous system in a low-grade state of activation, which you mistook for being alive. You will also discover that the man you are currently with, the kind man, the reliable one, the one whose presence feels flat, has been showing you a different kind of love. His love is steady. His love does not produce the spike. His love is what stable adult attachment actually feels like, which is, in the technical sense, restful. You have been mistaking the rest for boredom. They are not, despite what your nervous system has been telling you, the same thing. This will take a year to fully recalibrate. You may or may not stay with him. I am not here, going to tell you what to do. Because the man I am with at 27 and a half is not exactly the man you are with at 26. And the path between you and him is your own to walk. What I will tell you is that the project of the year is to learn, with your body and not with your mind, the difference between anxiety and love. Once you can tell the difference, the dating life you have been having for the past 6 years will begin to look, in retrospect, like a long misunderstanding. The new dating life, the one that begins after the recalibration, will be quieter. The quietness is the love. The quietness was always the love. You just had not yet learned to read it. I want to add a small specific test for you because I think it will be more useful than the abstraction. The next time you are with him or with anyone, ask yourself this: am I right now working at being in this room, working at being interesting, working at being attractive, working at being entertaining, working at performing the version of myself I think he wants? If the answer is yes, you are in anxiety, regardless of how the situation is labeled in your head. If the answer is no, you are in something that may, in time, become love. The test is simple. It is also brutal. Most women, when they first apply it honestly, discover that they have been working in almost every romantic situation of the last decade. They have, in fact, almost never been in a room with a man without working. The discovery is sobering. It is also the doorway through. Once you can identify the working, you can start in small experiments to stop. The stopping is what allows you to feel, finally, whether there is any actual interest in him underneath the working. Sometimes there is. Sometimes there is not. The information is, in either case, more valuable than the working ever was. The fifth thing you will stop doing at 27, and the one I most want to write about, is waiting to be chosen. You have been waiting to be chosen since you were about 15. I do not mean this dramatically. I mean it as a description of the position from which you have organized most of your adult choices. You have been, throughout your late teens and 20s, oriented toward becoming the kind of woman whom things would happen to, the kind of woman who would be picked by the right man, the right employer, the right friend group, the right city. You have been, in some quiet way, an applicant. The world has been the panel. This orientation was not your idea. It was given to you by a culture that for a long time framed a woman's life as a series of selections by others and by your own family of origin, which had its own version of the same message. You did not consciously absorb it. You just woke up at 23 already inside it. By 26, you have made so many decisions from inside the orientation that you are not sure what would be left if you stepped out of it. At 27, you step out of it. The stepping is as undramatic. It is a series of small interior shifts that over months become a different posture. You will, on a Wednesday in April, apply for a job that you would not previously have applied for, because some part of you has stopped asking whether you are likely to be picked. You will, on a Friday in May, end an arrangement with a man who was technically choosing you, because you have, for the first time, asked whether you were choosing him, and the answer was no. You will, on a Sunday in June, walk into a clothing shop and buy something that suits you, rather than something that would make you more easily chosen by some unspecified audience. The shift, when it has fully landed, is the most freeing thing that will happen to you in your 20s. The waiting was the heaviest thing you were carrying. You did not know it was a weight until you put it down. Once it is down, you walk differently. People who meet you at 28 will not be meeting the woman who is at 26. They will be meeting a woman who is, in some quiet way, already chosen. She has chosen herself. The room responds to this immediately. The men respond. The friends respond. The work responds. The whole architecture of how things come to you reorganizes around the new posture. There is one more thing I want to say about the fifth stop. which is that it is the prerequisite for everything else. None of the previous 4 really resolve until the 5th does. You cannot stop performing effortlessness while you are still waiting to be chosen, because the performance is part of the application. You cannot stop apologizing for your pace while you are still being judged by an imagined panel. You cannot recover your taste while you are still calibrating it for an audience. You cannot tell anxiety from love while you are still waiting to be wanted. The 5th stop, in some sense, is the center. The other 4 become possible only when this one shifts. I want to give you one practical thing on the 5th stop, because it is the one I have struggled most to actually do, and the smallest exercise I know that has helped. Once a week, do something with no audience, not in a performative way, not for a photograph, not to tell anyone about afterwards. A small specific thing, just for you. Eat a long lunch alone at a restaurant you have been curious about. Take yourself to a cinema in the afternoon to see a film you have wanted to see. Spend an hour in a bookshop with no agenda. Walk through a part of the city you have never walked through, with nothing on your headphones. The activity itself does not matter. What matters is that there is no one to be choosing you, no one to be impressed by you, no one to be performed for. It is just you and your own attention in a small, unwatched hour. The first time you do this, it will feel slightly strange. You will catch yourself several times framing the experience for an imagined audience, even though there is no one to share it with. By the 3rd or 4th week, the framing will subside. You will, for the first time in a long while, experience an hour as itself, rather than as material. The hours, once they begin to feel like themselves, accumulate. The accumulation is what the 5th stop is in practice. It is not a decision. It is a slow growing of unwatched hours, week after week, until the center of gravity has moved from the watching audience into your own life. I want to close with one thing I could not have said to you at 26, because I would not have believed myself. The year you are about to enter will feel, from inside, like a year in which you are losing things. You will lose, in the next 12 months, 2 or 3 friendships that have been with you since your early 20s. You will lose, possibly, the relationship you are currently in. You will lose, certainly, the version of yourself you have been operating as for 6 years. You will lose the comforting feeling of knowing exactly where you stand and what you are supposed to be doing. There will be evenings, sometime in the middle of the year, when you sit alone in your flat and wonder whether you have made some kind of terrible mistake by allowing the year to be what it is becoming. You have not made a mistake. The losses are the work. The losses are, in fact, the only way the work happens. Everything you lose this year is something that was, in some sense, already over, but that you had not yet given yourself permission to release. The year just gives you the permission. The releasing was always going to happen. You can do it on purpose, gracefully, or you can do it in your 40s under more painful conditions. The earlier choice is cheaper. What you gain is harder to describe in advance. You gain, at 27, a kind of quiet, settled feeling in your own body that you have never had before. You gain a relationship with your own taste, your own pace, your own preferences. That becomes, after a year, an actual relationship. You gain a slightly smaller life that is, in every way that matters, more yours. You gain, eventually, a small handful of people who know the real version of you, rather than the polished one, and who choose you in that form, because they have seen it. You gain the ability to lie alone, in the bed of the life you actually built, and find it, finally comfortable enough. The bed Joan Didion warned about turns out, when you have built it on your own terms, to be one of the most restful places a woman can find. I am not going to tell you everything will be easy. I am going to tell you that the year is worth what it costs. The 5 stops are the entire architecture of becoming, in some real sense, yourself. Most women, in my observation, do this work eventually, but they do it slowly, over decades, with long detours and a great deal of unnecessary suffering. You have in front of you the unusual chance to do it on purpose, in a year, with the prior knowledge of someone who has just been through it. I am 27 and a half, writing to you at 26, on a Tuesday evening, from a flat I chose, with a kind of quiet in my chest that I did not know was available. You can be here too, sooner than you think. Start with the first stop. The rest with time will follow. One last thing. If, in the middle of the year, you find yourself sitting on the floor of your bathroom at midnight, having just realized something painful about a friendship, or a relationship, or a job, please do interpret the sitting on the floor moment as evidence that something has gone wrong. The sitting on the floor moments are, in this year, the work. They are how a woman quietly becomes herself. The polished version of you that has been operating for 6 years would not have had the bathroom floor moment. She was too busy performing. The fact that you are now capable of sitting on the floor with the truth means the performing has, at last, been set down. Stay with the truth. Get up when you are ready. The next day will be slightly different than the one before it. By month 9, the bathroom floor moments will become rarer because there will be less inside you that has been hidden from yourself, and so less to crack open. I love you. I will see you on this side. This was the Femme frequency. Sleep well.